10 players with the most to prove as we get into training camp. 10 players on here, all for different reasons. And while the video stream shows number 10, Jordan Love, Hunter, believe it or not, Jordan Love not on this list.
I'm not
imagine
surprised.
You believe that. No, he shouldn't be on this list. He's got nothing to prove. When it comes to the regular season, if we do this list with the regular season, he might be number one, right? Like, I still think he should have a chip on his shoulder, prove to everybody it's not a fluke. But when it comes to this list, we're going to talk about a bunch of guys for different reasons. So let's get right into it. From 10 to 1, I even power ranked them for you. Number 10 on my list is the rookie safety drafted in the second round by the Packers, Javon Bullard. He is expected to be the other starting safety across from Xavier McKinney. I just think, hey, he's got the opportunity to say, hey, I belong. I was drafted in the second round. Goody drafted another defensive player from Georgia for a reason. Javon Bullard is number 10 on this list. I just want to make sure he belongs. Because if we get to, let's say, I don't know, week 1, and they've got AJJ back there, the 7th-round pick from a year ago at Iowa State, Anthony Johnson Jr., across from Xavier McKinney, that probably tells you things aren't going as smoothly as you had hoped. Javon Bullard brings a ton of speed. He brings power. He brings hard hitting. He's a good ball hawk. Like, he brings a lot of good skills to the NFL. I'd like to see those pop off right away. Javon Bullard, number 10 on my list. Number 9, not Jordan Love, but his backup from a season ago. Sean Clifford is number 9 with the most to prove on my list because I don't think the Packers are going to carry 3 quarterbacks. And rumor has it Michael Pratt out of Tulane, who the Packers drafted this year, he's got it. He's got some stuff. I know Goody really likes Sean Clifford, but I don't think he likes him enough to carry 3 quarterbacks. I think Sean Clifford has the 9th most to prove this training camp. Number 8 is Devontae Wyatt, another former first-round pick. Well, not another former first-round pick, but another draft pick. He was a first-round pick out of Georgia. Javon Bullard wasn't. Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, drafted a couple years ago in the first round, both out of Georgia by Goody. Devontae Wyatt's going to get the reps in the regular season. He will likely be a starter on the defensive line. But you've got to prove it to me. Like, we need to see Devontae Wyatt take that next step because for the last 2 years, he just hasn't. He's had some moments, he's had some flashes, but just, He's a replaceable defensive lineman. And when you put a first-round investment in a guy like that, you expect them to help Kenny Clark anchor that defensive line. So if from left to right it is Preston Smith, Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, and Rashawn Gary, it's pretty evident who the weakest link is. Don't let that be the case. Devontae Wyatt, number 8 on the list. 7th is weird, but I'll get to my reasoning. Number 7 is Grant DuBose, the now second-year wide receiver. DuBose was hurt early in last year, didn't really play a lot, wasn't on the active roster for most of the year. But late in the season, you saw some of those fringe roster wide receivers take that next step when you look at Malik Heath. Remember the Bo Melton game against Minnesota? Those are going to be likely wide receivers 5 and 6. Behind the obvious 4 of Watson, Dobbs, Reed, and Wicks, it's probably Heath and Melton. Will the Packers carry 7 receivers? I don't think so, but maybe. If Grant DuBose does something spectacular in training camp and in the preseason, I think DuBose can win a roster spot. But otherwise, it's probably sayonara, thanks for your time, for Grant DuBose. He's Packer number 7 with the most to prove to me. Number 6, the linebacker position is an interesting one. Quay Walker's your lead dog. But who's number 2? The Packers draft Edgerrin Cooper, but they have liked what they've seen out of Isaiah McDuffie in years past. He's now kind of a veteran on this team, been around for several years. Isaiah McDuffie is number 6 for me. I think he can win the starting spot with Quay Walker. And obviously there's going to be rotations. You'll see Edgerrin Cooper. You might even see a little Tyron Hopper, who is another mid-round pick for the Packers this year out of Missouri. I'm really intrigued to see what Isaiah McDuffie does, because I think it could kind of be a make-or-break camp for him, right? Does he become a starter? Does he really solidify himself there? Because he's always kind of been a fringe starter the last few years, it feels, at that linebacker position. Can he be a solidified starter for the Green Bay Packers in 2024? Isaiah McDuffie, number 6. Now, these top 5 are interesting. Number 5 is the first-round pick from this year. It's Jordan Morgan, the tackle out of Arizona. I don't think Jordan Morgan, actually, I really don't think Jordan Morgan will be a starter come week 1 in Brazil. I think he will be a depth piece for the offensive line this year. It's a guy that's been on the show a few times who was the same way until he was sprung into action. Brian Bulaga. He was a first-round pick. He didn't start week 1. But they liked him enough. When Tausch went down, Bulaga was in. They win a Super Bowl. And at the time, Bulaga was the youngest player to win a Super Bowl. Jordan Morgan, similarly to what I brought up with Javon Bullard, like, let's see you can do it. And he could potentially win a starting spot. I just don't think it'll happen. I think Rasheed Walker will be the starting left tackle. But there could be a point in the season where they go, all right, Jordan, it's time to cut you loose. Let's see what you got. And I think this training camp is going to be very, very vital when it comes to what his role is in 2024. Because I still think 3 months removed, that was one of those picks in the NFL draft for the Packers, Jordan Morgan was, where you looked at it and you go, I don't really get it. I don't really get it. I still don't really get it. I don't mind it. I don't think it's a bad pick. But I still think he has a lot to prove in 2024. So Jordan Morgan, number 5 on this list. Number 4, we stay with the offensive line. It is the center. It is Josh Myers. Josh Myers entering the final year of his contract. There's been whispers of maybe they'll try the idea of shuffling around that offensive line to the point where maybe Jordan Morgan does find himself in the starting lineup. Could Zach Tom be a better fit at center, and you figure out what to do at right tackle? Could Elton Jenkins be a center? Is Jordan Morgan, can he play left guard? I think there are a lot of question marks around the sustainability of Josh Myers as your starting center. He's fine. I wouldn't say he's good. Maybe he has good days, but he's definitely not a great center. He's not Corey Linsley. He's not Jeff Saturday. He's not even like Evan Dietrich Smith, who had a couple years as the starter for the Packers. I think Josh Myers has a lot to prove, because I remember last offseason, there was erratic snaps. There wasn't a lot of good rapport between him and Love early. That bled into the regular season a little bit. I remember that game. I think it was against Denver. There was a snap right over Love's head on a crucial third down, and that was the play. Josh Myers is number 4 on my list of most to prove. I think the top 3 could go in any order. I have an offensive player, I have a defensive player, and at number 3, I have a special teams player. It is the kicker, Anders Carlson. I don't know what needs to be said about Anders Carlson needing to prove he belongs. His rookie season was not good. They bring in Greg Joseph. They bring in that other guy from Detroit whose name I always forget. There's 3 kickers entering camp. Only one of them was a draft pick of the Green Bay Packers a year ago. Only one of them was the starting kicker a year ago. This is clearly not a Giorgio Tavecchio, Mason Crosby situation from a decade ago. This is clearly a best man is going to win. And if it ain't Anders Carlson, I think Goody will break his habit of hanging on to draft picks too long. He'll finally kick that habit. But if Anders Carlson can get it right, which admittedly he hasn't really been able to do. It's not like he was an outstanding kicker at Auburn. He had a really rough final year at Auburn. So the fact he was even a draft pick a year ago was concerning. And then the issues prevailed, especially towards the end of the regular season into the postseason. I think the stat is he missed a kick in 8 of the final 10 games. He's got a ton to prove. It's his job to lose, and he could certainly lose it in training camp. Packer with most to prove, number 2, is a cornerback, Eric Stokes. And look, I think he can be a starter. I think, the words that have been spoken about him this offseason is he's healthy. It seems like he's okay. It seems like he's good to go. And he's returned to form. Now, as a number 2 corner, that's not a bad problem to have. Eric Stokes is a reliable corner if healthy. A, you need to prove you're healthy. And B, you need to prove you're not behind a guy like Carrington Valentine, who had a strong rookie year a year ago with all the injuries. The Packers moved on from Rasul Douglas. I think that's a move they still regret. Because when Rasul Douglas was traded to the Bills, the Packers were not a playoff team. They were not a team in good shape. They were not a team that was ready to take that next step until they were, after Rasul Douglas left. Carrington Valentine got a ton of reps as a number 1 corner when Jair Alexander was hurt. But he's a 7th-round pick. Can Eric Stokes be that true number 2 corner, or does he honestly become a trade piece this offseason? I think if he proves he's a true number 2 option, they hang on to him. If he's behind the 8 ball when it comes to guys like Carrington Valentine and Corey Ballantyne, and I know there's a 7th-round pick rookie out of Penn State, Callan King is his name, that the Packers were really excited they got in the 7th round. So what if Eric Stokes is all of a sudden like your third or fourth best corner? I think he gets traded. So I think his destiny relies a lot on what occurs here in training camp. So Eric Stokes is number 2 for me. Hunter, before I tell you number 1, I'm going to give you the opportunity to guess number 1. Is there a name I haven't said that you think belongs on this list?
I mean, I do have a couple of names that I thought you would specifically bring up. I did see the list, so I want to just have a little bit of integrity there.
Okay, fair point.
But the names that I thought you were going to bring up on here, I thought you were going to specifically have Edgerrin Cooper, because I think he has an opportunity to win a starting job, because odds are they're only going to be really using 2 linebackers. So I thought he'd have a chance to be alongside Quay Walker. I thought he'd be like a 10-7 spot on your ranking.
So I mean, honestly, Hunter, I almost view number 6, which was Isaiah McDuffie. That's almost an Isaiah McDuffie / Edgerrin Cooper, right? Because maybe Isaiah McDuffie has a good camp, but Edgerrin Cooper is just popping off the page, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you have a really good problem at linebacker. So I'm with you. I think that's a name I considered. McDuffie was just a little bit more intriguing to me as the veteran, and I know it's a new scheme, it's a new defense, so I understand why you would think that. But if he's a mid-round pick, if he doesn't look like a starter day one, I guess he was a second-round pick, but if he doesn't look like a starter day one, I'm probably not losing sleep over that because I'm comfortable with Isaiah McDuffie as that second linebacker. So I appreciate your thought on it, but that would be my reasoning why not. Number 1 on my list, A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon is a tricky one for me. And we talked at length about this on State of the Packers with Jason Weldy and Gabe Neitzel. He's brought back on like the weirdest contract ever. It's essentially like just above a veteran's minimum. He's making like $1 million this year. Nothing, which is nothing. That's pennies in NFL terms. He is absolutely a fan favorite. He is terrific in the community. He's an awesome dude. So personally, I got nothing against A.J. Dillon. I think he is an all-time great Packers cult hero. Last year, he had the golden opportunity to be the number 1 back while Aaron Jones dealt with injuries for a majority of the season. He had 0 100-yard games. I don't even think he had an 80-yard game. He had a decent year rushing, but that's because he was fed the ball so much. His yards per carry were like 3.5, if that. It might have been 3.4 yards per carry, which is brutal in the NFL. I guess if you give him 3 carries, that's technically a first down, but barely. He's got a lot to prove. And they draft Marshawn Lloyd. They like Emmanuel Wilson. And obviously you have Josh Jacobs. There's no way you're carrying 4 running backs on this 53-man roster. And I think ultimately spot 53 will be between Emmanuel Wilson and A.J. Dillon. And A.J. obviously you can't, but I don't think you can put Emmanuel Wilson on the practice squad. I think he'll get nabbed up. I think he proved some stuff in the postseason that I did not know he was capable of. He actually made me say out loud, Emmanuel Wilson did. Emmanuel Wilson, I apologize. I was not familiar with your game. So A.J. Dillon, I think, is the Packer with the most to prove this training camp.